sometimes you have to accept the nerves. And, confidence is such a slippery thing. You think you're confident one day, the next day you're not.
Vic, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us. I'm really excited about this one because we're going to be talking about public speaking and that fear around it. And we know so many of the people that we work with have this fear of public speaking. And I think from my own experience, it's fair to say that I experienced that more so in my early career because I've learned to deal with it, and you get to the point where you actually enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking, I should say, and how to overcome this fear of public speaking and just give some tips and some tricks around it. It's also known as glossophobia.
Is it?
It is.
And I never knew that.
No, well, I didn't until the other day, actually. And I've been through the process of understanding, how to speak publicly and develop those skills over time. But I never knew it was called that. But that stands for, so gloss meaning tongue or language, phobia meaning fear or dread.
Makes sense.
So we go. So we learned a new word already. Give us a bit of insight into your career, because it would be good to start at the beginning and just look at how perhaps if you've had any fears around public speaking, because I know when we spoke the other day, you said, well, I don't get it quite as much anymore because you've done it for so long. So yeah, give us a little bit of your career journey.
Well, it's really lovely to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this. We're going to have a great chat and hopefully some useful insights as well, as you say. But I'm going to take you back to when I was 13. Now, I didn't grow up in this country. I emigrated from the United States.
Okay.
So when I landed in Britain at the age of 13, I was all over the place. So I was very American. I had braces, quite spotty, very swatty, a swatty schoolgirl. So I had a bit of a tough time sort of settling in.
Yeah.
So I kind of hid myself a bit with writing. So I was quite good at English. So I used to get A's in my essays, wrote some terrible poems. And the headmaster was quite pleased with that side of things. But he said something that has stayed with me all my life. And he said in one of my reports, Victoria's future will not lie in the spoken word. Wow. So damning with faint praise. He was obviously trying to say she should stick to writing.
Yeah.
But something like that, when you're 13 and pretty sensitive, it stays with you.
Yeah.
And these things do stay with you, and it's fine. So we all carry around this imposter syndrome, the inner chimp, whatever you want to call it. And we remember those words and we think, am I good enough? Can I do this? So we'll get to that. But I'll move on from being 13. And I was shy, became less shy, grew up. But it's okay to have the imposter syndrome and to have the nerves. That would be normal. So in terms of my career, I got into acting a little bit, Amdram. And then I did a course and thought, I quite like this. I want to be an actor. So I tried to get my equity card, and there was a moment when I realised this was not for me.
Okay.
So I was in Wandsworth in a shopping centre that has now been razed to the ground, rightly so. And I was dressed as Cinderella with a big purple wig while my colleagues were flogging Encyclopedia Britannica. They were trying to sell the encyclopedia. Do you remember Encyclopedia Britannica?
No, I do. I actually do. I do.
Yeah. That was before the internet. Shows how old I am. So I was meant to be looking after the kids while the parents were being sold expensive sets of Encyclopedia Britannica, reading them stories. And, this was how I was going to get my equity card. It was going okay until I went for a break. I was wandering around the Arndale Centre, and a group of lads thought, great, and they were trying to pull off my wig and throw things at me. And I thought, I'm not sure this is the career that I should choose. Luckily, a mate of mine said, there's a vacancy on the local newspaper. You've done some journalism at college, come along. So I launched my career in journalism. The print bit was fine. I worked on local papers and, got my qualifications, but I kind of missed the performing side. So I thought, I could do some radio. So I became a travel girl.
Okay.
For Radio Essex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the travel news for a while. And then a job came up at LBC as a producer. So I thought, well, I could use the knowledge of the sort of on-air stuff with the journalism stuff. So I joined LBC, and after a while I got a go at news reading, and I had no idea how to read the news. I did it too fast, And then one day I was coming out of the studio, the booth where I'd been reading the news too fast. And the head of LBC happened to be passing. He said, "Oh, you, yes, you, girl." It was a bit like that. "You sing the news." I was like, "Do I?" But I knew what he meant. I wasn't really doing it authentically. I was sort of performing the news.
Okay.
And sounding a bit too joyful. And it was all back at the time of sort of Kosovo and the Balkans and all those problems. And I was sort of singing this terrible news and basically not doing a very good job. So, you know, after time, I got a bit better. I went on to Classic FM, slowed it down, you know, different tone, different kind of radio station, and then moved into TV. But, you know, the nerves are always there. It's a part of it. You need that adrenaline to do the things that you do. And because I was freelance, I did kind of everything, really, every job going. So producing, then reporting, presenting. Then I learned to self-shoot. So I had my own camera kit, used all that. Still got a couple of injuries from those days before everybody started filming on their smartphones. Yeah, definitely got dodgy back, dodgy shoulders, dodgy knees.
Bit heavier
Partly
the kit,
from,
then.
it was a lot
Bulkier.
heavier. In fact, I had to ask for a smaller camera because they were big, those cameras. So did all that. I learned how to edit, did some news editing. I think just about every job that you could. So I've worked across the BBC radio stations as well as Classic FM. I've worked with Jeremy Vine, Vanessa Feltz, Matthew Wright, various different stations. For TV, I worked for ITV, Euronews. I was their news correspondent all through COVID and a couple of general elections. I've covered a lot of royal deaths, I have to say.
Yeah.
I was on air when Princess Diana died.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big moment. I was the only one at the radio studio, so I had to cover it alone for a few hours while that was going on. And I've interviewed a few prime ministers. In fact, I'm going to tell you a story.
Go on.
About one of the prime ministers I've interviewed. See if you can work out who it is, and then I'll tell you why I'm telling the story. So this particular prime minister had a very tightly controlled team around him. So much so that when we turned up to film, we were only allowed to film him walking in one direction and not the other. To this day, I have no idea why. To me, he looks the same from both sides. But it was just, I think, to show an element of control. So we were asked to send our questions in advance, which journalists hate doing because we're supposed to be able to ask what we want.
Yeah.
So on the day, Dan, I may have slipped in an extra question because it was the Prime Minister and I had my shot. So I did ask an extra unscripted question about foreign policy in Libya, which was really topical at the time. It was all happening around this Prime Minister. He didn't look too pleased, but he knew the answer. Prime Minister, he'd made the policy pretty much. But while we were having this conversation and, you know, we were live and there was a camera rolling and I was holding a mic, his press officer punched me in the shoulder to show how displeased she was that I'd kind of gone off script and asked an unsolicited question. I mean, I carried on. He carried on. He kind of strode off. And then she was nice as pie. And I kind of get it because she was obviously going to get a rocket from the guy, from the man, because that's the kind of team that he seemed to run. But yeah, the bruise is gone. I'm fine. But, you know, the memory remains. And at the best of times, those sort of relationships between journalists and comms can be fragile.
Yeah.
So perhaps I wasn't the best advice that I would put out there to those who are looking after your spokespeople. But the reason I've told you that story, or shared that story, is because if you are thinking about presenting, even if it's to the board or your colleagues or doing a bigger presentation, stories have impact. So you're probably less likely to remember the places I worked and what I did, but you will hopefully, possibly remember that I got punched by the Prime Minister's press secretary. You're going to guess who it is? Any idea which Prime Minister it might have been? I'll put you on the spot now.
Yeah, you have. I don't know. Go on.
Yeah, it was David Cameron. Yeah,
okay,
and
wow.
I've met him twice, and both times he was, pretty, what's the word? Tightly controlled and sort of very unmedia friendly. I think it's fair to say. So that was my experience with him and his press officer, who I won't name.
I guess we've all got
She's
a job
forgiven.
to do, though, right? So you've got to take your shot, and then he's got to act in his way that is
Yeah.
Whatever his demeanour is supposed to be.
He
It's
answered the
cool,
question.
calm, collected. Yeah.
Possibly without violence would be my advice.
Yeah.
But, if you can get hit by David Cameron's press secretary and still live to tell the tale, then I think you can probably get through most public speaking opportunities. Yeah.
Amazing. And now you work for Media First.
Yes, I do.
Just give us a little bit of insight into what you do with Media
Yeah,
First.
so obviously my journalist is a background, which is what I bring to when we do the media training. But we do all kinds of different types of training. And a lot of it is around presentation and public speaking in a variety of circumstances. So maybe in a crisis, maybe if you're doing an interview with the media, maybe if you're presenting, to the board, to colleagues, to stakeholders, to your own staff, to a bigger room, online, face to face. I mean, there's so many different ways, and people always have the things they like best and the things they like least. But it's all the same sort of skill set, whether even in a job interview, which is one of the most terrifying times of having to present yourself. We've all been there. Yeah. So we do a lot of that, and with a lot of different companies, one-to-ones, larger groups, and just try and help with some advice and some guidance so that people can make the most of their presenting skills.
I think this was I was so excited to have you on because there's so much crossover, and I didn't appreciate this before I started with BCF Group, 2 and a bit years ago. And I don't come from a media background, so I'd not had exposure to that side of it. But there's so much crossover in the skills that you're talking about there. So whether you're presenting to the media, whether it's a written interview, whether it's a podcast, there's all sorts of skills that are transferable into, if we're talking to L&D, HR professionals, if we're talking about having to go and present to the board, having to go and give a message to the teams, there's so many transferable skills and so many things we can learn from others. I'm just going to unpack some of the things that you mentioned there because you triggered some thoughts in me as well. I was the shyest kid in the world. There's a running joke in my family that I used to hang around my mum's leg because I wouldn't speak to anyone.
Yeah.
If you'd have said to my teachers, Dan would end up presenting in front of hundreds of people, being on webinars, being on a podcast, I think they'd have laughed at you. It's similar to your story. I've said, like no chance. Not in a million years is that going to happen.
Amazing.
So I think, the fact that us two are sitting here doing this, having had the careers that we've had to date, shows that, even if you got that fear around public speaking, you can do it, you can overcome it, and you can make a success out of it as well. Was there an influence in terms of you moving into media? How did you move into that? Because, as a youngster, that wouldn't have been something that would have been on my radar to go, well, I'll go and work for a radio station. It just wouldn't have entered my head.
It was a kind of series of things. So obviously at university, I was involved with the student newspaper. So I used to do quite a lot of sort of going to the theatre and entertainment stuff and write about that. And so I had that kind of journalistic background. And when I graduated, I wanted to get involved in that. And I remember writing to Michael Billington, who's still the theatre reviewer for The Guardian. I think he's still at The Guardian. Sorry if he's moved. And going to do some work experience at Time Out and stuff. And then the acting bug bit, and I tried to go that route until the Arndale Centre experience with the wig. And I thought, maybe. And then the job came up at the local paper. And then 3 years after that, I thought, how can I combine the journalism, which is really great, which is going to be my career, with the performance aspect that I miss? And that's when the sort of radio job came up, and that just grew and grew and grew and grew. So it was a series of events, really. Yeah,
brilliant. For me, it's the proactiveness of that. And without jumping too far ahead, because we'll talk about some tips a little bit later on, some strategies. But for me, it was putting myself in a position where I was anxious, nervous, scared about public speaking, and putting myself in those positions where I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I remember being asked to be best man. I was about 21.
Wow.
And I mean, that's a tough gig. For anyone that's done that, it's tough because whether you're funny or not, you're expected to be funny. Yeah. And however, when you flip that around, you go, actually, you've got a captive audience. Most people have had a few drinks. They want you to do well. And that to me was the biggest game changer of going from actually, do you know what, I've got to speak in front of 150, 160 people that I don't know most of them. I've got to try and make them laugh, which didn't feel natural.
Yeah.
And then you get through it, and you go, oh, that was really good. I really enjoyed
feeling
it.
Yeah. When you got through it.
Yeah. And the amount of people that came up to me after, they were going, Dan, that was brilliant. And
right.
whether it was or not, who knows? But it was enough to give me the confidence of going, actually, I really enjoyed that. I want to do it again.
Good.
And I think it's that, for me, it
is addictive.
Yeah, it is. It is. Once you get over that first barrier of, I can't do it, this is going to be horrible, and we reframe and we go into the, actually, let's think about what you get from it and the impact you've had on all those people. And if I move that into the workplace, I always think about the impact that we have on people when we share a message, and your storytelling is a really good tip around that.
But something you just said there was really interesting, Dan, and you said, it's a supportive audience, and I think it usually is. I think people are there because they want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
They're interested and largely supportive, and I think that's always really worth remembering, that most people are on your side, if not all. And if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world, because they want you to succeed and do a great job.
So true.
Yeah.
And we're humans, aren't we? We're going to make mistakes.
Of course.
And that's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's
it's
okay.
normal.
Yeah. And I think, I agree, again, like if we're in a boardroom, if we're presenting to the team, whether that's good news or bad news, most people want us all to be in it together and to do well. So, I think I'm glad you picked up on that bit. Good. Right, let's unpack this a bit further then. So research suggests that over 70% of people in the UK experience some level of anxiety with public speaking. There's a huge amount of people that have a fear, which is why I wanted to do this podcast, because if this helps a few people and we bring those numbers down a little bit, then we're doing a good job. Talk to me about some of the symptoms that either you've experienced or that you help your clients overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm presenting to the board today, I can't wait. I mean, there are people that do love it.
Yeah.
But most of us will have some degree of apprehension, if not nerves. I used to know a guy at a radio station I worked who did a sports show, and he was really good at it, but he was physically sick before every show. I mean, I've just felt so sorry for him. And then he'd do a great show.
Yeah.
And you'd think, off the back of it, he must have felt great because he got through it and he conquered his nerves, or done it anyway. Did a great show, but every week was the same for him. And sometimes you have to accept the nerves. And, confidence is such a slippery thing. You think you're confident one day, the next day you're not. And you just have to sort of try and live with that, which is really difficult. You're not always going to be in the best of moods, in the best of shape, but, it's a job that you do. And probably the difference between you feeling 70% and 50% won't be noticed by your audience. One thing I tell a lot of my delegates is, it's not about you. Because I think we all think, I've got to do a good presentation. It's about my performance. What will people think of me? But actually, if we shift that a bit and take the pressure off ourselves and think, what can I offer the audience? How can I best communicate what I want to say? How can I make that accessible and simple? What can I do to serve the people who are with me in the room? And then I think you can shift that a little bit away from thinking about yourself to thinking about what you're doing this for and who you're doing this for. One thing on that as well is it's easy, isn't it, when you can see your audience, to make a judgment about your audience and then reflect it back onto yourself. Perhaps, on 2 occasions I've been presenting, and on 2 occasions someone in the audience has fallen asleep. Okay?
So, I'm laughing because I've seen it as well. Yeah.
So first of all, you probably judge them and think, they've fallen asleep, that's not great. And then you judge yourself thinking, it's me, I'm boring, or they're not interested, okay? And then but if you unpack that a bit, so on one occasion it was a junior doctor who'd been on shift for about 75 hours, who frankly, in a warm room, in a comfortable chair, go for it.
First time I'd sat down for hours.
For hours on end, busy saving lives.
Yeah.
And the second one, this was interesting, I was running a course out in Saudi Arabia, and it was like an apprentice-style course. So we were working with young journalists who were going to be, some of them were going to be chosen to be interns for a big Saudi magazine group. And we were part of that judging panel, if you like. Okay. We had to work for several weeks with these young people and decide who should go forward. And there was one young woman who I had my eye on because she was particularly bright and hardworking. And I just thought, she's going to be great journalist for this magazine group. So I was doing one of the courses one day, presenting one of the courses, and I noticed she'd fallen asleep. So instantly you make that judgment on her and on yourself. You think, oh, that's not great. She's not going through now, which is a very quick escalation of judgment. And then I thought, oh, it's obviously me. She's not interested. She doesn't care. She's asleep. And you don't even realise you're making all these judgments. And then she came up to me afterwards and she explained, she said, sometimes I close my eyes for a few seconds because I've got narcolepsy. I was like, oh.
Okay.
And she said, I've got a strategy in place. I always have someone there to take notes for me. And I will, if you don't mind, I'll come up to you afterwards if it's happened and make sure I haven't missed anything. So because she explained that, I thought, oh, it's not me. It's not even her. Yeah. Now I understand. Yeah. So, what I tell my clients is, don't let what happens in the audience affect you too much, because people have lives to live and reasons why they might need to check their phone or close their eyes or even leave. And it's quite hard not to take that personally, but usually it's something to do with them and their lives. So I think that's something I've learned.
I totally agree with you. And we coach a lot of people around this and, in different industries. But for me, it's the same principles. And a very similar experience of training someone, and he was an engineer and had been out on call the night before and had worked all through the night and had come straight into the training room. And typically you have that, in training room, you have that disagreement, is that a way to put it, over the temperature early on in the day. There's always someone's cold, always someone's hot, and the temperature was up a few degrees more than it should have been. And about an hour in, I could just see his eyes just going. Yeah. And the way I look at that is always, and this is part of what we teach around the psychology around training, delivery, messaging, public speaking. I always start with me, but not to beat me up. So not to go, oh, that person's fallen asleep, I must be boring, I'm not getting the right message across, whatever it might be. But to start with me just as a checkpoint and go, right, are the engagement levels right? Am I talking too much? Am I giving opportunity for interaction and engagement? Am I allowing questions to be asked? Am I pitching at the right level for this team, for this individual? And if I can stand there and go, yes, I'm doing all of that as I set out to do, then actually it's not about me. And it is about, let's find out, let's go and ask, is everything okay? I just noticed that, you're just struggling a little bit there. And exactly what I did is, same in your instance. And he said, I've been up all night. I've just been out on site and we had this major problem. I had to fix it and I'm just struggling. Yeah, of course. No problem at all. Like, do you want to take 10 minutes? We'll break early? Like, what do you want to do? What works best for you? We can open a window, you can stand up, whatever it is. But I think the point out of that is that too often in public speaking, we look at ourselves and we forget to look at what's going on around us, because we think that everyone's eyes are on us and it doesn't feel very nice. And actually let's turn that round and push that back and go, what's going on in the room? The other thing I always look at is if I can make 1% difference to one person in the room. So I start at the smallest impact. If I can make 1% difference, one person in the room, I'm winning. I'm doing a good job. Yeah. And you'll always make more than that. Yeah, that's true. It's a really good idea to think of. Because as you said, people want to be there and they want to pick something up. So they want to understand something. So I lead with that, because for me, in my mindset, that makes it okay, because I know I'm going to win. That's a really good mindset. But those nerves that people have, and they come in varying degrees, and that can chop and change. I mean, it's normal, and it actually makes for a better performance. You need the adrenaline. It doesn't always feel very nice. But there are things that you can do if you feel the nerves are too much or taking control. And breathing exercises. Apparently, so everyone says you breathe in, you're doing it now, you breathe in, and then you hold it, and then you breathe out. Yeah. If you really slow that down and breathe out for longer than you breathe in, something amazing happens inside your body, and the chemistry changes so that you start to feel calmer. You might need to do it for longer than you think. Yeah. And obviously be careful not to hyperventilate, so do it slowly. But that literally breathing in for 4, holding for a couple of beats, out for 6. I would do a few of those. And then you can extend that as your lungs start to get used to more oxygen. You could do breathing in for 6, holding for a couple of beats, out for 8. This is what actors do to prepare, to work with their nerves and manage them.
And the other thing is to get your voice ready so that you don't have to worry about coughing and spluttering. So I hum in the shower. I don't know what your trick is, Dan, but I hum in the shower, do some breathing and then some humming. And I was doing some tongue twisters in the car on the way up here to make sure I could speak, because you're the first person really, apart from a couple of words at home with sleepy people, that I've spoken to today. Yeah. And that's often the case when you're presenting first thing in the morning. So you do need to sort of make sure you can speak. I don't know if you do anything to warm up your voice, or whether it's hydration, which is also really important, having lots to drink, and also moderating your pace. That really helps me think if I speak more slowly.
Same. Yeah, so for me, when I get into the presentation, every so often there's a pause in there, which is just a moment for reflection to build up to the next point. But also, let's flip that round. I was doing some coaching this week, and we were looking at the power of silence, and I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but the power of silence of when we're presenting, make your point, stay silent for a minute, and people get worried about that because then everyone's looking at you. But actually flip that round to the audience. We're going, I'm giving you an opportunity to digest that information, so I'm not going to move along too quickly. So I agree, pace is really important. I'd learned from you, actually, because I remember you saying before about humming in the shower or something. So I don't hum because nobody needs to hear that anyway. But what I will do is make sure before I get into a session, whatever it is, coaching, training, podcasting, that I've spoken enough before I get into that session. And whether that's a deliberate conversation with someone at home before I go out, whether it's a phone call, whether it's just singing along to something in the car, something like that, because I agree, just getting your voice ready. And it's the same as that, I liken that to sport. In my background of I don't just run on the pitch and play. There's a lot of preparation that goes into being match ready. Can you remember what you were doing just before the podcast?
Just before the podcast, I was having a drink. Oh no, I've got a terrible short-term memory. Oh yes, I do. I was being an oak tree.
You were, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I felt a bit cold. It's a bit cool in here, and I've been stuck in the car for an hour. So I did a bit of a physical warm-up, didn't I? I was swinging my arms around and being an oak tree, by which I mean standing up, planting your feet, raising your hands and having a good old stretch. Yeah. And it literally warms you up, and it makes you feel as if you own the space in the room. So I would recommend being an oak tree, if you do nothing else as a physical warm-up, will just get you in the right sort of frame of mind to take the stage, sit at the desk, whatever it might be. Yeah, and what you said about warming up is really important as well. And the best warm-up is rehearsing, perhaps the wrong word, going over some of the things you're going to say.
Yes.
Before you actually do it for real. Yeah. Out loud. It's got to be out loud. People do it in their heads. How's that going to help? Because there might be a day when you just can't say certain things. I remember having to do a live report on the Northern Ireland Protocol, and there were a lot of words, some of them Irish, and a lot of figures, and I thought, I've really got to keep going over this out loud, or I'm not going to be able to deliver live when I do it for real. So yeah, I think I got away with that.
I totally agree on that point as well. For me, so imagery and self-talk. So I imagine myself in the situation. So, this podcast today, I've imagined us sitting here. So in my head, this isn't the first time we've had this conversation. I've been through it, and I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But as humans, we like certainty. We like to know what's coming up. So I've already played this out. So I don't know all the words that will come out, but I know the gist of what we're talking about, and it feels comfortable. Self-talk as well. I'd absolutely agree with you. Whether you're going into a one-to-one with your team members, giving some good news or bad news, whether you're going to present to the board, whether you're going to speak at a company conference, whatever that might be, the more you've been through that, the easier it gets, the more comfortable you get with it. So, by the time you get on stage, you've already been through that talk 10, 20, 30 plus times, and actually it's just another version of it. Yeah. It's just another go. And when we go in with that attitude, like, actually I've done it 30 times already, and I've got it nailed on because I've ironed out all the flaws and I'm ready to go. And hey, if I make a few mistakes and I stumble a few words, who cares?
Yeah,
we're just human anyway.
It's true. I mean, 30 times is a lot, but some people want 30 times and some people want once. I mean, it depends, doesn't it, on your level of experience and how you like to prepare. But yeah, I would give yourself a bit of a chance. Do as much as you need to do. And some subjects take more prep than other subjects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll talk about preparation because there's a lot of ideas around that. But yeah, I mean, give yourself a chance, rehearse. And as you say, I'll say this now because I'm going to say it at some point in the podcast, perfectionism is the enemy of good. Let's all go for good and be kind to ourselves. It's never going to be perfect. I remember you actually in a training session we did together saying, but how can I be perfect? How can I make it perfect? I mean, there's no such thing. And also that's not very human, is it? We're not AI. You know, we are human beings and we are imperfect. And things they never go the way that you think, which is good.
Yeah.
Because that's life and you find new things and it all works out in the end. So let's forget the idea of being perfect.
It's really interesting that because I remember that conversation and I remember you saying to me that. And when you look at that from, you know, when I'm coaching and training, I'd recommend that. When we search for perfect, well, do we ever get there? And if you look for perfect, you never get started. Just get started, get the ball rolling, and then you iron out some things here and there, and you get that right, and then something else drops off. And
give yourself a deadline.
Yeah,
you know, as a journalist, we're always sort of busting deadlines. I mean, meeting deadlines. But we have to. It's never going to be perfect because there's a point at which we have to file our report.
Yeah.
So that's as good as it's going to be.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
Done. Yeah. And I would say most of the time that is a job well done.
Yeah. And also people never know what you don't tell them.
Yeah, that's true.
People beat themselves up. I forgot to mention that. But nobody is ever going to judge you except yourself. Yeah. So you can let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stay out of judgment of yourself. That's definitely not a helpful thing. Agree with that. Tell us about some of the different situations then that we might find ourselves presenting, speaking to a larger audience or smaller audience.
Yeah. I mean, there are lots now, particularly since the pandemic when everything's gone online. So you might be presenting to a small room of people, colleagues, which can be the most terrifying, I think, rather than presenting in front of a room full of strangers. Yeah. You might be on a stage, you might be behind a lectern, you might be sitting, you might be standing. It's worth thinking about all the logistics of that. So you know how you're going to walk onto the stage or stand behind the lectern. You know, we do quite a bit on body language to help us when we're standing and sitting and presenting, as well as voice work. You might be doing a webinar or a podcast. You might be doing media interviews online, on radio, on TV, print. You might be having a job interview. You might be in an elevator. You've got 30 seconds to pitch to the boss. So there are so many different ways in which presenting can really help you with your skill set and with those particular ideas. With the online stuff, with the Zoom and Teams, that's a whole different set of rules, if you like, how you can present best on Zoom and Teams. And, you know, there are 3 things that tend to go wrong. Do you know what they are? That when you're doing perhaps an interview or presenting on Zoom and Teams, I mean, they're really basic, but there's lots that can go wrong, obviously. Yeah. But there's 3 things that are so easy to correct, and people are still getting them wrong.
Are we talking camera angles? Is that in there?
Sort of. So it's where you're looking.
Yeah.
So people's eye line, because on Zoom and Teams, people tend to look at other things on the screen and they forget to look at the camera. Yeah. And looking at the camera is like looking at people, which is what you want to replicate. Yeah, so you've got to look at the camera. And it's really difficult because we're not used to doing it. So a tip I tell my delegates is next time you're on Zoom or Teams, try and spend the whole meeting looking at the camera rather than the other people in the meeting. Yeah. It's really difficult, but it's great practice for when you have to do it for real. Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing people get wrong is sitting in the dark. Yeah. So the lighting. You know, I've seen that in the professional broadcast world. I remember doing a shift at Good Morning Britain, spending hours working on helping a woman who's going to be interviewed, questions, scripts, all the details that the presenter needed. And when they put her on air, she was in the dark, and it was at 4 a.m. or whatever, and we couldn't see her face at all. And it was a total waste of everybody's time because she didn't have a light on. You know, ostensibly the tech team should have said, can you put a light on? Yeah. But the best kind is just to light your face directly. So get yourself a little ring light, or maybe just a desk lamp if you're presenting online, and that will help. So we've got eyeline, we've got lighting, and there's one more thing that people get wrong quite a lot when they're presenting on Zoom and Teams. They don't think about this particular element, but everyone notices it.
Background.
The background, absolutely, yeah. People need to set their shot up the night before so that they can get the background right. And by that I mean not too distracting, not too cluttered. Please don't be tempted to put a filter on. People put blurs on, they put green screens. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
We just try and work out what you're hiding.
Yeah.
And usually we can work it out.
Yeah.
It's incredibly distracting, actually. Yeah. So a bit of visual interest, maybe a corner with a pot plant.
Yeah.
You can use a bookcase if it's not too close behind you and everyone can read your choices. So those are the three things that I always mention when it comes to presenting online, and obviously other things to take into account when you're doing it in person.
The big thing out of that for me is that there's absolutely some skills in there that do take some practice, but we can all get to that. And the camera trick, it's something I learned early on, working with yourself and some of the other guys at Media First, that it makes a huge difference when you're connecting with people. And there's so much, the common misconception around presenting remotely is that we can't see people's body language, we can't read what they're doing. And for me, you're framing someone's face, so you've got a zoomed in version, so you can look at facial expressions, eye contact, eye movements, and you can tell body language, because if someone's, I don't know, if they're crossing their arms, for example, their shoulders tend to round, and then you can see creases in the shirt. So you can't see all of it, but there are some giveaways in there. But for me, it's about those connections. The more that we can connect and we look through just around the camera lens is your tip. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, on a laptop, that tiny little camera looks straight at it.
Okay.
I mean, I deliver a lot of courses online, and I can't see what my delegates are doing, maybe just as well. But it's more important that I make eye contact with them, and you do that by looking at the camera. Yeah. Do you know about the W in the room? So if you're presenting to a room full of people, that's quite a useful tip, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you've got a room full of people, what we tend to do is we sort of zone in on the one person who looks the most interested, and that poor person is at your mercy for the next however long it is.
I'll tell you a story about that in a second.
Oh, okay. So we've got to try as presenters to take in everybody in the room. So you can, if you're sort of facing the room, the W would be, so you look, it's quite hard to explain this, but the W would be to look to the left. So you're standing on the stage, look to the left, look to the back, come back up to the centre, go to the back right, and then come back up again. And that W pretty much encompasses everybody in the room. And tell me your story about what happened to you.
I won't give too much detail. I was delivering a course, and on one of our courses, trainer course, we get people to get up and present quite early on. And someone had told this person that when you're presenting, if you feel nervous, just pick out one person in the audience and stare at them. And after about 2 minutes, I just had to stop him short. And I was like, you can't do that, because how does that make that one individual in the audience feel? Yeah. You've got to scan the room. And whether that's a large audience, or whether that's 4-6 people in a room, it's the same principle. So I think that the W technique is a really good tip.
Just reminds you to perhaps not put someone.
Please don't put one person under
Was that
pressure.
person you? Were you just sitting there with
someone
a
else.
big grin?
No, someone else. I just felt so awkward for them. I was like, right, let's just stop that, because that's not nice for that individual. The other thing that I often teach is that if we're not particularly confident with eye contact, then looking just around someone's face, or if you're up on the stage, looking just over someone's head, because if you've got a bit more distance, it still looks like you're connecting with someone. It still feels like that for the audience. There's little things like that that we can do.
Or just the third eye, just above your eye line. Because I know people do find that difficult.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and we want eye contact, but not for too long, because it gets awkward. So it's about the right timing of it as well. Do you know what? Every time I talk about this, and maybe it's just what I've come back to, but it's always about preparation for me. And anyone that's ever come to work for me, within the training team, anyone that, for my own practice, but for supporting others, for coaching, I always come back to, if we get the setup right, then the delivery is so much easier. You know, if you walk in the room and you're flapping and you know, you've missed your train or something, and we can draw that all the way back to, well, maybe we should have got up a little bit earlier and we should have got the first train.
Been there, done that. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it sounds easy, but then we coach that all the way back to going, well, why didn't I get that first train? Well, maybe I was too laid back about it, or maybe actually I went to bed too late the night before. So it's not even about the presentation and delivery. We've taken that all the way back to the night before. I was ill prepared and I went to bed half an hour late, so I got up half an hour late, and that knock-on effect then impacts on your presentation. So for me, preparation's key. We've spoken a little bit about that. Do you want to unpack that a little bit more?
And you're right. I mean, even kind of, I never used to sort of think about getting my clothes out the night before or check the trains, but obviously now I've learned my lesson, because you don't want to arrive kind of not really in the right headspace. Although if that happens, and it does happen, technique and having prepared will stand you in good stead, and you can always do better than you think you can. Having said that, so if there's all kinds of ways of preparing, but there are always going to be your people who wing it, right?
Yeah.
And I would say sometimes winging it can work really well, but there's going to be a time when you come unstuck. So you might, 9 times out of 10, fantastic, winging it, great, I'm amazing, I can do this, no prep, I'm amazing. But that 10th time, something's going to go wrong and you won't have prepared enough to get over that hurdle. So winging it is one way, it's not my way, and I wouldn't recommend it because it's risky.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, the other end of the spectrum is the people that write reams of script. Now, I've done all these things, Dan. I have road tested this stuff. I'm sure you have as well. The other thing is writing everything down. And I've done that as a reporter doing lives, and I've watched myself back and I am reading from a book, and that does not look or sound great. It changes your tone, changes your energy. You're not making eye contact. So then I had to basically kill that darling, rip up the script and just do bullet points. When it's a tough subject like Northern Ireland or there are lots of facts and figures, that's fine, because I'm not someone who finds it easy to remember big numbers. Yeah. That's my thing. So I have to make a note of them so you get it right. But a lot of people are reluctant to give up their script. They've probably spent hours crafting it. It's probably a beautiful piece of work, but it's not going to serve you on the day as well as bullet points where you can make eye contact with the audience and be more conversational, because if you have words to read, you will read them. You just will, because they're there. Yeah. A tip I have on that is if you are doing a presentation and you feel the stuff I need to look down at, that's fine. Rehearse and learn the first 15 seconds. This is what all reporters do. They learn the first 10 to 15 seconds, which might be an introduction. And I've seen delegates reading their own name. Yeah. We all know who we are. Yeah. Yeah. So let's say that out loud to the audience rather than reading our name from a script. So if you can learn the first 10 or 15 seconds, you'll have more impact. So if you can do no more than that, that's a good start. But bullet points rather than script. If you need to write the script and then leave it behind, and some people like to have done that, and that's great. I think often even in a one-day course, you see people who start with their script and end up with nothing, because you always know more than you think you know. And having done the work, it's gone into your head and you're able to deliver it in a more authentic and engaging way.
You're the subject expert on that, particularly, where we're talking about, L&D, HR professionals, their teams that are having to go out to deliver messages. You're the subject expert on it. Just build that confidence in yourself that you know what you're talking about. And the script really is there for it's a bit of a comfort blanket. But to me, it detracts from the authenticity because you're right, because you're reading every word. And often when then we're reading every word, our eyes and our head are pointing at the sheet. So we're projecting our voice to the sheet of paper, to our iPad, whatever we've got in front of us, to the laptop, rather than projecting to the group. Yeah. And that has an impact on how the message is received.
All the energy goes into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing, just picking up on said there briefly is that for me, I have to, this outside of work context, at rugby, I have to get up and present every week, do literally a 2-minute speech, if that, in front of 150, 200 people in the clubhouse. And there's a little bit of that outside of a work context where you think, hang on, everyone's just played rugby or they've been watching, they've had a few drinks. No one's really going to remember all the words you say. So for me, it's about preparation. What are the 2 or 3 things that I really want to get across? So what are the 2 or 3 key messages? So it's normally, and because I've done it for so many years, it's normally thank the opposition, a little bit of information about the game, and then we do a man of the match. But those 3 things make it really simple. And if I go back, I don't know, 15, 20 years when I was really nervous about doing that, I used to hate doing it every week. That was my coping mechanism of going, right, how can I overcome the fear of getting up in front of everyone when everyone's a bit rowdy, they're not really listening to you. So how can you control the room, that many people? 3 things. They're my messages, stick to that, and then we'll get control over that room. And for me, that's one of the common challenges I see, is that we're giving too many messages. Is that something that you're familiar with?
I mean, in my training, I say choose one key message, and people are surprised because people always think 3, 5, 7, I've heard, but it's confusing. We've road tested this. One key message is going to help you be clear, and it's really going to help your audience be clear about what they should take away. Remember, it's all about them, what you would like them to learn or remember or benefit from. So if they know what your message is, great. It works both ways. And you can reinforce that message, which means repeating it.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to sound different, and it's going to help the audience really soak it in. And let's keep it short and clear and concise and right at the top. It's a good way of opening a presentation.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, straight in with your key message, and then you give your information around it as well. Yeah. That's a good tip. Talk to me about some of your examples around when either some great public speakers or something has it gone wrong at times?
I mean, that's the thing. It goes wrong a lot. And I would say, I'm glad you brought that up, because we've all seen it, haven't we? We've all seen professors shoving their children under the desk and wives crawling on their knees and people... And, the thing is, we love a mistake. So if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. What to do with it is own it, because the audience is loving it. So you may as well enjoy it too. So a little thing that happened to me, I was doing an online course and I'd set it all up, had my background, my lighting, checked it, I road tested everything. It was all going well. What I hadn't realised was I've got a very small chihuahua. I mean, she's like the tiniest, hairiest chihuahua you've ever seen.
Yeah.
She'd sneaked into the room without me knowing, and she'd hopped. She's so tiny, I didn't see her. She'd hopped up onto a sofa behind me.
Yeah.
And she was essentially sitting just over my left shoulder while I was doing the online course for 20 minutes. And nobody told me.
I didn't know.
No. And so suddenly I caught sight of her out the side of and people were obviously just decided that this was funny or hilarious, and they weren't going to tell me. So you just have to sort of, own it and say, well, okay, this is Maple. I didn't realise she sneaked into the room. Say hello to everyone, Maple. I'm just going to move Maple and put her outside the room. Yeah. And you just have to do that, because it's life, isn't it? The doorbell's going to ring, or the kids are going to go home from school. Or for me, every time it's the bin men. So there's always going to be something that doesn't go quite right. And enjoy it. Own it. There's no point in being hugely embarrassed or trying to hide it. It's part of the presentation now, so make it part of your presentation.
Can't change it. It's happened.
Can't change it. Yeah, things go wrong. In fact, one of the examples that I want to give you is a TED Talk specialist called Chris Anderson, who we've had here at Media First in the studios. We did a whole webinar on TED Talks, and he's done a lot of TED Talks, and he coaches people on doing TED Talks. And one of the best TED Talks I ever saw was one of his, when he went to use his slides. Lots of people use slide decks to support them, hopefully, rather than to do the work for them. Absolutely. Anyway, his tech went down. Yeah. No slides. So there he is, about to a TED Talk in front of hundreds of people, no slides. He thought, well, here we go. And he just did it without slides. And honestly, nobody would have noticed. He did such a good job. And also, nobody knows what you don't tell them or what you don't show them. And he did a great TED Talk. I prefer presentations without slides. I think they're much more powerful and authentic and engaging because people tend to rely on their slides, and that is death by PowerPoint many times.
Yeah.
So if you are going to, while we're talking about slides, if you are going to use slides, less is more. And you're the presenter. Let's not rely on the slides with reams of boring text and too much information. That's for you, the presenter, not for PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's a really important point out of all of this because, you know, people who will be listening will be in that situation where they're likely to have slide decks that go with their training, with their presentations. Yeah. And it's something we talk about on our trainer course often, and it comes up, and there's just too much text on it, and it is that death by PowerPoint. Yeah. For me, the slide deck is there as a visual. It's something that we then, because most of us are visual, we like to see things. So it's good if we've got something that we can see that connects to the story that we're telling. It can make it more memorable, but again, with just limited information, even sometimes just an image is enough.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a little bit of a prompt for you as the speaker. It's a little bit of a visual, but I'm totally with you. And you mentioned earlier on about, you know, your background and having a bookcase. If we're talking remotely and you've got a bookcase, I agree. I think it's okay if you've got a few books on there. If you got Nasser Hussain did it on Sky Sports, and he's got all the way through COVID, and so cricket, and there's so many books behind him. I spent half time looking at what books he's got. So I'm not listening to the conversation or the message that's coming across because I'm too intrigued by what's going on around it. And it's the same with PowerPoints. If we've got too much going on there, I'm reading that and I'm not engaging with you, the individual. And ultimately, I want to hear from you because you're the expert. You've got the knowledge, not a slide deck with loads of information on it.
Yeah, and I know people sometimes are reluctant to give up their slide deck, partly because it can serve as a prompt. But what I always say is if you have what we call a full-fat version, which might have all the information, send that out separately to the people that need to see it so they can look at it in their own time.
Yeah.
And maybe use a low-fat version for the actual presentation with less stuff to read.
Agree.
Because we try, don't we? We try and read the slides while listening. And the result is we can't do either.
Agree.
So we've lost.
Agree.
On both counts.
Yeah, and again, where does your connection go? Because if you spend half your time turning around and looking at the screen rather than connecting with the audience, you're losing or you're diminishing the impact that you're having with the audience.
That's
as well.
another good point. If you do, as you say, turn to look at the slide. I've turned away from the mic now. Make sure you turn back to deliver your point. Absolutely. Yeah. Particularly if there are people out in the audience that can't see or may have other needs. It's always worth remembering. Some people are lip readers. Yeah. They can't read your lips if you've turned your back on them to read a slide. Yeah. So there's lots to unpack about slides. But you asked me about some good and bad speakers. I mean, Obama always comes probably top of the list. And what's particularly memorable about him is what he didn't say. So many pauses.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to any of his speeches, there are very few words. The sentences are very short, and there's so many pauses to let that meaning of what he's saying land. Yeah. So, and the kind of the mantras that really work. Yes, we can. Everybody knows who said that and what it means. And he would say it several times and wait for reaction and have the confidence to wait. And that's difficult, but achievable. So I'm doing it now. You throw in a pause and people are like, what are you going to say next? Yeah. Or it changes the tone. Already I'm speaking in a more intimate way. And you can play with that because it can have a different impact. So Obama, pauses, powerful pauses, the confidence to wait for his audience to join him. Controversially, perhaps, Boris Johnson's mantra, let's get Brexit done. Yeah. We all know that he said that, and we all know that he did that.
Yeah.
And again, it's like the Obama, yes, we can. Boris Johnson, let's. So it's inclusive, it's including the audience, we, let us. And I think that's pretty powerful in any kind of presentation, to use the you, we, us, your family, your lives, your business. I think it's really effective when it comes to presenting. I don't know if you remember, there was an interview, it's gone viral now, with Steve Jobs, who started off as a very nervous presenter, by the way.
Yeah.
And he really worked on it and built it until he became so confident that this happened. He was presenting and he was asked a difficult question, which was pretty much a personal attack on him. So he took his time. And that was so powerful. He did a 30-second pause while he considered how to address this. And it was so watchable because he was sort of thought for a bit, and then he sat down and he thought for a bit more. He started and then he stopped again, waited till he was really prepared, and then delivered a blistering answer. So that was really impressive that he was able to do that. On the less impressive side, so I don't know if you remember, we had a Prime Minister very briefly called Liz Truss.
I do.
It was very brief.
Yeah.
She did a round of local radio interviews. I think that she genuinely thought she would have an easier time doing local radio than national radio. She was very wrong, because local radio journalists really know their stuff.
Yeah.
Their local issues, they're all over it in a way that she wasn't.
Yeah.
She had not prepared for the different kinds of local issues that came up. It was really embarrassing and also disrespectful. At times she forgot which radio station she was on. I mean, it's all out there. You can hear it. There was BBC Radio Lancashire when she was asked about fracking, which is a very relevant local issue, and she really floundered because she hadn't done the work, or it sounded as if she hadn't done the work. So you need to be prepared in terms of anticipating the kinds of questions you're going to be asked. And if you're speaking to people in Lancashire, know what they care about so you can be relevant and show that you are interested in them, because it's all about the audience. And she had none of that, and unfortunately it was a car crash. Apparently she refuses media training. I'll just leave that there. Yeah. There's a few famous speech makers who you might be surprised to hear. Winston Churchill, obviously a famous orator, but he actually struggled for a long time. He had a speech impediment when he was younger, which he really was challenged with when he was doing public speaking in his early days. So, but that's okay. It's okay to have these challenges and to do it anyway, to maybe not even overcome them, but just to deal with whatever it is, a speech impediment, finding it hard to look at people's eyes, perhaps having a quiet voice. There are ways to overcome and manage it. And the best way to do that is just to be yourself.
Yeah,
people
agreed.
Accept
Yeah.
that that you're a different kind of speaker to the next person, and that's fine.
Yeah.
People want authentic delivery and authentic performance. They want you to be you, you know?
There was a famous quote from him. I don't have time to write a short letter, so I'm going to write a long one instead. And it takes a minute to get your head around it, but it's hard to be, you said about Obama as well, you know, to be concise, to get a message across in as few words as possible with maximum impact. And what we look at a lot of the time is it's the words that we use within that. So, for example, yet is a really powerful word. So when we're talking about, I haven't achieved that, or I haven't achieved that yet, it changes the whole context of our our mindset and the way that we're looking forwards. So when we're presenting, when we're giving messages, just a small tweak can make a massive impact in a small sentence as well.
And the power of repetition as well. Yeah. Yes, we can. How many times did he say that in his gladiatorial speech? Loads. The other things to think about are, people often worry about their ums and ers and filler words. I don't think people notice those as much as you think. And we all do it because we're humans. Yeah. And I think it's fine. I think you can maybe stop beating yourself up too much about the ums and ers. People will still worry about their accents, and that is just gone now. Nobody cares. It's all about being yourself. So bring on the accent. We've all got one.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all got our little things that we do, filler words, and it's fine. People will accept that. So accept it about yourself. One thing you can do to help yourself is, so I'll refer you to Richard Nixon. There's a very famous televised speech, sort of bit of electioneering between him and President Kennedy. And President Kennedy came across as very confident, although he had his issues, of course. He was constantly in pain because of his back. But Richard Nixon came across essentially as really sweaty.
Okay.
And because he was sweating, and it was clear that he was sweating, it was probably just a really warm studio. But everybody made a judgment that he was nervous or hiding something. So I would say, if it's a hot day and you think you're going to sweat, stick a bit of face powder on. Men and women alike. Okay. And that is just going to take that sweat away, and then people do judge sometimes about little things like that, so you can help yourself by being prepared for the weather in a way that Richard Nixon wasn't.
I'm surprised I'm going to say this, and my wife would find this funny, but that's a great tip, because I remember there was a situation last summer, we were doing a webinar and the aircon had gone down for whatever reason, and it was about 35 degrees and it was so hot. I mean, luckily I had a dark shirt on, so you can't, and it was really hot, and so you couldn't see anything. The other thing I did was just I leant forwards a little bit so that then you're not getting covered in sweat, and it's not a very nice conversation, but it's just thinking about those things. But I had plenty of water by the side. I had, my kids were a bit younger then, so I had some wet wipes as well, that you just, every time I went off camera, you could just dabbing my face down. That then was, it wasn't making my face shiny as such, so it wasn't impacting on the screen. But yeah, there's little things like that we can do. Vic, let's start to wrap this up then. So my two biggest takeaways so far, and this is something I'm really really thoughtful of and really wanting to share the message of, is around that ability to pause, that power of silence. And we get a little bit worried about it because we think the eyes are on us, but I flip it round, and this is what I coach a lot of the time, is if we flip that round, we're giving our audience opportunity to digest the information, to gather their thoughts before we make the next point. So for me, that has maximum impact. The other bit that I always come back to is preparation. Just be fully prepared and do what works for you. You know, if it's making yourself as big as an oak tree, if it's humming in the shower, if it's singing on the way to, you know, to your presentation, then do that and find what works for you, and keep trying different things until you work out what works really well. What are your top 3 leadership sound bites from today?
Yeah, well, I mean, prepare is on there. Do those breathing exercises. Do try this. You know, they do work. People tend to feel a bit silly, but give it a go. And if nothing else, practice what you're going to say out loud. Find a space or a place to do it. If you walk into any newsroom, people are wandering around talking to themselves because they're about to go on air, so they need to know what they're going to say. It's giving yourself a chance. Yeah. And I would say use those bullet points rather than a script to help you if you need to. If you're new at this, or you do get nervous, and we all do, then bullet points, try the bullet points. They may well work for you. Yeah, so do the preparation so that you feel ready, but equally don't spend all weekend writing a beautiful script if you can help it. Try and go with the bullet points. So that would be 1. Be yourself. And what does that mean? It means a bit like we are now. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend, and that will help with your tone. You'll sound more informal, more conversational. Try it out. You know, practice maybe what you're going to say with a friend or a family member, so you get that tone right. Channel someone that you know, not a colleague, not someone who works in the same industry, someone outside of that who would need a clarity and simplicity, one strong, clear message. So if you can channel that informal conversational tone, you'll be more authentic and you'll be more yourself. And we know that that's what the audience wants because it works. And finally, I would say, feel that fear, notice it, accept it, and just do it anyway. It's actually going to help you more than hinder you. People don't believe me when I say that, but that adrenaline is important. And you'll give a better performance, and you'll feel amazing when it's over because you've got through it. It may not be exactly what you intended, but nobody else cares about that because they don't know. So just congratulate yourself on having got through it. Every time you do it is a bit more practice. So accept the fear, accept the imposter syndrome. It's there in most of us, but you can still do this, and you will, and people will learn something from you.
Amazing. That's a great way to finish. Vic, thank you so much for coming in. That was brilliant. And thank you guys to listening in as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time. The Sound Leadership Podcast was produced by Media First. To learn more about the media crisis and communications training, visit mediafirst.co.uk. The editor and producer was Darren Wingham. The show was hosted, written and researched by me, Dan Boniface. A special thanks to all the team at Media First and the BCF Group for supporting the development of this podcast. To learn more about the management, leadership, training and coaching that the BCF Group offer, visit thebcfgroup.co.uk or get in touch by emailing hello@thebcfgroup.co.uk. Finally, a special thanks to our exceptional guest today, who you can contact via the BCF Group.